Here's another low budget yet highly detailed shoe review, and this is the Crank Brothers Candy Lace. Retails for an MSRP of $170. Comes in black, white, this green, and also kind of a muted blue. This is their gravel shoe, which is sort of a mountain bike shoe, but with a stiff sole, I guess. XC racing shoe. Kind of budget, but it has some features on it which are a little bit progressive, innovative maybe. One is that it has a very square toe box, so you've got a little bit more room for your feet and your toes in the front. The other is that it's the cleat slots back here go back a lot farther than most shoes outside of maybe like a downhill type or enduro shoe, which has more of a midfoot thing, but these things go back almost to the midpoint of the shoe if you wanted to get your cleats really far back. Top side here, the material is kind of a synthetic, and if you look closely, it's got kind of this sort of like a ripstop grain to it, and it's kind of a plasticky material. In some ways it feels a little cheap, but it seems like strong and functional. And it has, with this texture, it's also a little bit more muted, so especially in this green and the blue colors, these shoes don't scream like, podium winner. They're a little more sort of woodsy, I guess you could say. Has this sort of toe bumper that extends around to the outside that I guess gives it a little extra abrasion resistance. It's not very thick though, so it's kind of cosmetic, but it looks nice, right? It's got a lot of perforation here to get this material to breathe a bit. For some reason, there's no, your big toe doesn't get any ventilation, but I don't know, I guess that's just a, art student design kind of thing, and it looks good overall as a shoe. We've got, a nice flat lace. The laces, there hasn't even have any eyelets here. These are sort of punched through and fused to make a tougher area where the laces come through. Up here, there's a nice riveted eyelet in the Crank Brothers logo, so that's kind of a nice design touch there. It's riveted with 2 rivets on the inside, but strangely, there's not one on the opposing side, so I don't know why that was skipped, but still, it's it's a $170 shoe, so we can't expect everything out of it. We've got a nice full rubber sole here with some traction spikes that are kind of angled for extra traction and aerodynamics, I guess. We've got traction here in the midsole area, so if you're standing on wet logs or something like that, it's not like a slippery plate. It's got a little extra bumper right here. That's probably good for cyclocross where your pedals might be kind of tagging your heels. The big question for a lot of people is how stiff is this shoe? And I can tell you it is extremely stiff for a non-carbon fiber shoe that just has a plastic sole. It's one of the stiffest I've felt, I think, in this price point. In the back here, we've got a kind of a heel cut molded in here that gives some extra heel stability. Plus, there is this like very significant padding here to give you extra kind of a lock-in feel around your ankle. We've got a tongue here that is made of kind of more leathery material and has some extra padding in here to protect you from the laces, which is something I've seen other shoes in this sort of lace-up retro style get wrong, is they make the tongue too thin. And this one has like a nice padded thickness and lots of ventilation there. Overall, it's a well-done shoe. The toe box is really nice. It's glad to see it, this kind of thing, these things get bigger. I wouldn't say that it's, we're at the sort of like the barefoot shoe level of width. It's a fairly standard width and volume. You just get a little extra room in your toes. The cleat placement is great if you want to go back to your, to more of a midfoot position, you get less calf loading, be less on your toes, that kind of thing. It's a little odd though in that, the curvature of the sole is fairly traditional, and then it's flat, and then it kind of swoops down and then comes up with this toe spring here. And I think that feels pretty good, if your cleat is under where your foot flexes, under your metatarsals. But if you're running them slam back here, it's a little strange because, the flat part of the cleat is going to be sort of inclined like this. And yeah, the pedal does move you around like this, but it does kind of feel like your toes are high when you're actually trying to pedal from the center of your foot. But, I don't think everybody's going to notice that. And maybe that's just me coming from more flat style pedals and more midfoot, that it's not quite what I'm looking for. And if you're, going to run the cleats further forward in a more normal position, I think you'll like the overall feel of them. Now, in riding these, I did notice something really strange in the first ride, in that something felt off on the inside of the shoe. And if we take a look deep inside of here, if we can get a good view there's the slot where the cleat plate fits in. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's about 5 millimeters deep at its lowest point. And it was not really filled out with anything. There was just like a tiny piece of plastic over there, thinner than a business card, and then some basically fancy duct tape. So what I was feeling was sort of this hole like right under my foot, and that was just kind of weird out of the saddle, like something just felt off about it. What I did do though is took my handy dandy 3D printer and made a shim that I then heated up with a heat gun, dropped it in here, and then molded it to fit the curvature of the sole, and that kind of solved that problem. So I'll leave a link to the Thingiverse files if you want to print one of these, but you could also just stack up some thin plastic or rubber to do it. Here we get a better look at this sole, so you can see how it's sort of like a leathery material, and then laminated over that is sort of this thin, more breathable material that covers this sort of foam padding here. We can see a little more detail on the inside of the shoe here. We have a kind of a breathable meshy sort of material on the inside covering the padding. The actual material here also has sort of a breathable meshy stuff that I think is part of the single laminate that makes that material. Also has a little lace holder here to keep your laces out of your chain rings. So there you go. That is the candy lace. Yeah, it's a nice shoe. Has some good features to it. Not too expensive. You can get it in that basic black if you're retro. You've got those sort of Gorecore green and blue, and then white if you want to be kind of stylish. And doesn't break the bank. Yeah, pretty good. You might like it. Thanks for watching.